Hey everybody, it's Bob Crossan, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest, and today we are talking more about our young professionals for 2020 like we are doing all month long in July. And I have with me Chandler Mancuso, Technical Coordinator for Plymouth Technology Incorporated. So Chandler, thank you so much for being on the call today and for joining us.
Absolutely. Honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I wanted to start first and foremost kind of with your career path. You're one of the youngest of our young professionals this year. Could you talk about how you got into water and what drew you to the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, when I was an undergraduate in college was when it started, and I actually had no idea really the industry had even existed. But my environmental sciences faculty advisor had recommended me to Plymouth Technology for an internship program as I was looking for some research experience before doing my honors college thesis. And so I reached out to them and I got the internship. And I think that I really started to gain some traction here when I just started having some success here. And we actually partnered with Plymouth Technology to do my honors college thesis on boron removal from fracking flowback water. And it was very successful. And so I think that that really helped me solidify, my interest in the industry. And it just really kept going from there. And since then, it's just really been a pretty inspiring journey. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I got the impression through a lot of your questionnaire answers that you were insanely passionate for this industry too. Could you talk a little bit about that passion, where that comes from?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that really is one of the benefits of being in this industry is that for somebody who wants to have as much of a positive environmental impact as they could possibly have, it's a great industry for you to be in. And I think that being in this industry really allows me to maximize my impact that I can have on the planet. And so when you combine that with just the, success and interest that I was having when I first started here at Plymouth, I think that's what really grounded me is to really enjoy this industry and really want to stay in it.
Yeah, yeah. So one of your memorable projects that you had mentioned was this brewery application and specifically with phosphorus and whatnot. You mentioned that there were some learnings that you had through that. Could you talk about what types of things you learned and how that got incorporated into Plymouth Technology's future?
Yeah, so really, this ended up being a unique phosphorus application for us because most of the applications, if not all of the applications up to this point, had been strictly with the simplest form of phosphorus, which was orthophosphate. And the mechanisms for removing orthophosphate are very well understood. But we learned throughout this in particular application that this was not orthophosphate that we were dealing with. It was a more complex species of phosphorus. And so what we really had to do was multiple things. We had to first figure out what different types of phosphorus species could be found in wastewater. Secondly, we had to figure out how we could test for them. How can we manipulate analytical methods to suss out what types of phosphorus are actually in this waste stream? And then third, we had to figure out what mechanisms were required to remove this phosphorus and what chemistry we needed to employ those mechanisms for removal. So there were a lot of different layers to the process, and it was really rewarding because we were able to get through a very complex application with a profound solution. And I think that as phosphorus removal applications become more prevalent because phosphorus removal becomes more important, this information is going to be very crucial for us moving forward now that we have a better understanding of this contaminant and how to remove it.
Yeah, yeah. Just understanding that nuance sounds like it was a lot of fun to learn about.
Oh, it was absolutely a lot of fun. That's another part of this industry that's so enjoyable is that it seems like we always have new problems that are coming up that we have to find unique challenges or that we have to find unique solutions to. So, yeah, I think that the whole process was really enjoyable.
Yeah, yeah. So before you entered into the industry and stuff, one of the things that you had mentioned on your questionnaire again was this field ecology trip that you took to Africa in 2017. Could you talk a little bit about that trip and give us some of like the lasting memories that you took away from that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this was actually a 1 month hiatus between my internship at Plymouth and my full-time employment at Plymouth. And I had just graduated with my undergraduate degree in environmental science with a minor in biology. And so did my sister and my girlfriend. So we all went down to South Africa and stayed on a game reserve for a month. And we did what was actually technically an internship. It was a terrestrial field ecology internship. And there were just so many aspects to this trip that were really quite memorable. I mean, one, just being on a game reserve around all those, megafauna in South Africa, right? The lions, the rhinos, the giraffes, everything like that is very special. Secondly, we were down there for a month. That was the longest I had ever been outside of the country. And so you sort of have to assimilate to the culture a little bit, in order to really settle in there for that long a period of time. And so that was a really good experience. But third, being able to put all of that knowledge that we had been gaining over the past few years really into practice in an entirely different country, and especially with my girlfriend and sister, it was just a really special experience, for sure. And I'm really glad that we did it. And then, yeah, I came back, and then I started working full time at Plymouth when I came back to reality.
Yeah, well, your passion for wildlife and stuff like that is also shown in some of the other work that you've done with birding and frog watching and that kind of stuff. Could you talk about the programs that you've done with that? It sounds like that was part of your college thesis even. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so we do, birding and frog watching just for hobbies and pastimes because we enjoy doing it. But there are also, national and international databases out there that allow citizen scientists to contribute data to these population databases that help them understand population abundances and distributions. And this allows them to be able to understand whether certain environmental factors like climate change and habitat loss are affecting these species. And so the way in which we do it through birding is through eBird. It's an international database put on by the University of Cornell, and we were able to submit all of our observations through that. And then through Frogwatch, it's through Frogwatch USA, which is put on by the American Association of Zoos and Aquariums. And so that one is national database, and this is very good stuff. Not only can we contribute, but they also have a pretty good way of making sure that that data is legitimized. eBird has regional reviewers that make sure that there's legitimacy behind all of the data in their region. We actually had to take a class and pass an exam and everything in order to be able to submit data through Frogwatch. So very special programs for us to be able to take things that we're already doing and putting them into action and making that data useful.
Yeah. So how did some of I imagine that some of the skills and stuff for that translate to your day to day as well. Am I off base on that, or is that actually something that you recognize as well?
Well, in terms of, direct species identification in water treatment, unfortunately, it doesn't really have a whole lot of a benefit. However, when I was going to school as an undergraduate in environmental science, I actually had a field biology class where I was taking exams on bird identification and another organism identification. And I think that that's really where I started to realize this is actually kind of fun, and I kind of want to do this for a pass on. So yeah, it definitely tied in really well to my undergraduate knowledge base, and I think that I just kind of took it from there. And that's really when I started to have a lot of fun doing it and felt qualified, if you will, to be able to submit data to those databases and be able to contribute quality data.
Yeah, yeah. I was thinking more like you're recording things and tracking and all of that. You talked about some lab work that you do in the office too. So that to me is like there's a somewhat of a skill leveling there.
It certainly could be, at least on a secondary level, if you will,
Yeah.
it's just a general knowledge of science. It certainly translates, especially just in the way in which you do things, methodical processes.
Mhm.
So there's definitely sort of methodical nature to the way in which we bird and the way in which we have to frog watch in order to submit data. So yeah, it definitely helps if you have a science background, I think, to really get into birding and frog watching.
Yeah. So, one of the things I always like to ask our young professionals as well, and especially for you, since you're one of the younger ones, what are ways that employers and organizations can cater to the next generation of workforce? You had talked about like your internship was really informative for you. What other types of things can utilities, engineering firms, OEMs even do to try and get more of that young talent?
Yeah, so no, it's a really interesting question because I think it's a little bit two pronged. First, specific to the water treatment industry, there's just not a whole lot of material covered on the water treatment industry in pretty much any college curriculum. So to really get a whole lot of an appreciation for this industry, you have to have opportunities to get into it until there's institutional, educational programs that people can take that would, educate them on an industry like this. So extending as many opportunities as you can to give people exposure to this industry so that they know it exists, let alone even having interest in it, is certainly huge. But I think that there are also just some drivers with our generation in general, and I think that I'm not alone in that. I'm somebody who's super passionate about, the environment and the planet, and I think that this industry really is sprouting into an industry that is all about sustainability and environmental protection. And it's interesting you asked this question because I was just listening to a podcast this morning that was talking about motivational drivers for different generations. And one of the big drivers for millennials, evidently, is finding purpose in what they do and finding purpose in their work. And I think that a lot of millennials and other people who are younger like me would find a lot of purpose in sustainability and in environmental protection. And if that can be marketed in this industry and in the workplace, I think that's something that'd be really enticing to younger people like me.
Yeah, yeah. I was talking to one of our other young professionals about how there's also this culture of like my role in society is to help those around me, not necessarily help myself. And
Mhm.
I feel like that also is another part of this industry. You're lifting people up when you can give them a base foundation for life, which is clean water.
Yeah, without a doubt, there definitely is this sort of altruistic nature to this industry and in this position, and that makes it really rewarding. And that's what's really, important to me, and that's the reason why I find so much motivation. I think here in this industry is that you really can see firsthand the type of impact that you're able to have when you're in a position in an industry like this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, thank you so much for Chandler. I do appreciate you taking the time with us today. It's been great getting to talk to you, and hopefully further down the line when they are available and they're happening again, we can meet at an event or something. So,
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for having me on the call. I really appreciate it.